ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has laid down the law to party members. During this year's January 8th statement, Ramaphosa called on greater discipline from comrades and demanded an immediate end to corruption. Ramaphosa says state capture is responsible for plundering state coffers, but also robbing the public sector of important skills. I'm now joined by political analysts Elvis, Masoga and Lukhanyo, Vangqa to unpack the ANC's address. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for your time this evening. Elvis, I'm going to start with you, and I want to find out, it's been a very rough start to 2022 for the ANC. What have you made of events leading up to this year's January 8th statement?
Oh, thanks very much. Firstly, my humble greetings to you and all, the viewers of eNCA. Yeah, it is indeed, an epochal and a defining moment for the governing party, the ANC, particularly leading to their 110th, anniversary celebrations. They just emerged from the November, 2021 municipal elections, where nationally, in terms of national electoral, statistics, the ANC suffered. So unprecedentedly. It has never happened post-1994. But at the same time, there is a general perception among ANC members and leaders, irrespective of their factional sides, that corruption seems to be eating away at the moral and revolutionary fabric of the ANC. So there's a consensus in relation to that. Even when you listen to different leaders of the ANC, drawn from different factions, they seem to agree that the biggest contributor to, the drop in percentage for the ANC in the municipal elections is based around corruption. Many members of the ANC boycotted the municipal election necessarily because they don't see a better life for all for them. They don't see what their elected councillors and mayors are doing for them at local level. So very few people blame party president Cyril Ramaphosa, but they seem to be blaming leaders who are corrupt. That is the reason why the ANC performed dismally so. But an advantage for the president is that they don't ascribe the blame on him, but rather on the level of chronic corruption that is endemic in our municipalities. Even the Auditor General every year releases a consolidated, audit reports in terms of the performance of our municipalities, and they are found wanting. Most of them are useless, if not dysfunctional. So there is a general agreement in the ANC that corruption is eating away at the moral and revolutionary fabric of the liberation movement.
Thank you very much. Lukhanyo, I want to come to you. And before we talk specifically about the contents of Party President Cyril Ramaphosa's January 8th statement, I want to find out what you make of recent speculation that the Parliament fire, the smashed windows at the Concourt, the security scare at the ANC Women's League event where the party president was removed very quickly, the electricity interference at last night's ANC gala dinner, whether these are all targeted attacks on the state, specifically related to the July unrest and perhaps even the members of the RET faction?
Well, good evening, Annie, and thank you for having me. The January 8th statement of the ANC this weekend particularly took place within an environment of intense speculation and also very huge security concerns in the country. So when these activities and events started to happen around the ANC's January 8th statement, there's a lot of speculation that started to build up, and that's both within the ANC and outside of the ANC, and also in general society as well. So when the president gets evacuated from the Women's League's Lillian Boy lecture, then later the president is unable to finish his speech when there's a power outage, then those coincidences, we don't know as a society whether to ascribe them to organizational glitches or security breaches. And when the Minister of Police, Vangqa, says that someone actually, handled the plugs in that particular venue, then you start to think this is more than just a coincidence. Maybe it's connected to the attacks at the Corn Court, the hammer that broke the windows of the Corn Court, the hand grenade, the person that was found with the grenade in Bloemfontein, and also the parliamentary fire. But I would also urge that we don't speculate when we are unable to have clear evidence that is able to link these events together, because to do so would mean that we're saying that the country is under attack, and if the country is under attack, then there will be panic that will begin to take hold in society. So what we can call for is the authorities to really speed up and accelerate those investigations so that we don't have speculation that takes hold. But however, those organizational glitches and or security breaches are a real concern, that the factional battles in the ANC are starting to have a spillover effect on the rest of society.
While we're speaking to you, Lukhanyo, we seem to have heard everything in today's January 8th address in some form or another before, or at least it feels that way. What did stand out for you as either something new or something very pertinent that we should be paying attention to?
Well, that general feeling is justified, and because the theme of the president's first address in 2018, first January 8th statement, was the renewal of the ANC. And the theme for this year was the unity and renewal of the ANC. And the priorities were pretty much the same. In 2018, they were talking about building strong partnerships. This year, they're talking about social compact, which is building strong partnerships. They're still speaking about land expropriation this year. They spoke about that in 2018 as well in his first speech. Now it's his last speech of his term, the January 8th, that is. And he's still pretty much talking about the same things. But what we think is something that is new that the president spoke about, is really the idea that we need to accelerate, land expropriation without compensation, irregardless of the fact that the bill, fell through in Parliament, fell flat on the floor of Parliament. But there are other avenues that they will be looking at to try and, to accelerate that process of land expropriation. I don't know how they will do it. I don't believe it's possible that they can do it, but other people that are more learned than I am, such as Elvis, said it's possible to have land expropriation within the current constitutional dispensation. I don't believe that it's possible, but let's see how far they get with that this year. And hopefully, I'm not trying to be a cynic, and I do genuinely hope that they're able to do that, because land in this country is a very serious, urgent issue that needs to be addressed.
An absolute key issue. I'm sure we're going to speak a lot more about land expropriation this year, especially seeing as the issue of COVID is starting to settle down. We're all learning to live a little bit more with COVID in our lives. Elvis, coming to you, what stood out for you in this January 8th statement as the ANC celebrated 110 years of existence?
I think the quintessential elements that define the ANC party president's speech today was his persistent, stance on, the renewal of the liberation movement. Because it was quite clear that the party president today was saying to the rank and file members of the ANC that we are now drawing the line in the sand, you dare cross it. And it was quite clear that the president was saying to members that gone are those days when, as leaders, we will tolerate the political paralysis and moral degeneration that have up to now infected larger parts of the ANC. And that one, even people outside the ANC, they are fully aware that, at a level of, political paralysis and moral degeneration, it has become so endemic in the ANC to a point whereby the only solution is the renewal of the organizational renewal. But there are long-term and short-term implications when you undertake organizational renewal as a leader of the party. There will be some short-term, ramifications like, resistance. Some cadres and leaders within your movement who have benefited very much from state capture. We've benefited very much from vices such as, pillaging, kleptocracy, and corruption. They will try to resist. Even political history has shown us that there's never been any political, faction that lost power and subsequently folded their arms. No, it has never happened. They usually wage resistance. They usually wage a fight back campaign in order to regain their lost power. And that's exactly what is happening in the ANC. Because, for example, the state capture, when almost all South Africans were observing the proceedings at the Zondo Commission, confirmed our worst fears and nightmares, that indeed it was not, the figment of our imagination to think that most of our political leaders are stealing from the people. It was quite clear, empirical and anecdotal evidence was presented before the Zondo Commission that the leaders whom we elected to serve us with distinction to create a better life for all people were actually lining up their pockets. So, and that's why the current, president of the ANC has realized, and correctly so, that the only way to save the ANC is to deal with the monster of corruption. And unfortunately, there will be short-term, ramifications. Others will try to fight back, others will resist, particularly people who benefit from corruption. They will wage a very fierce battle against any attempt, to stop corruption. So that's exactly what is happening in the ANC. But the only solution is for them to embark on a thorough and a clinical, cleansing process. The ANC need to be cleansed if they still want to remain in government come 2024.
Elvis, in order to achieve renewal and unity, as you've said, we will need a cleansing. But the ANC is definitely going to need more than just words. We've spoken about dealing with corruption. We've spoken about dealing decisively with cadre deployment. That hasn't happened on ground level yet. So what will need to be done at branch and at community level for the ANC to regain its 50% majority in national elections in the future? Because that's the eye on the prize going forward. The ANC doesn't just want to renew itself for its own sake. It wants to renew itself to stay in power ultimately.
You're very correct. There's a timeless, injunction in the discipline of legal jurisprudence that says justice must not only be served, but it must also be seen to be served. So the same applies to organizational renewal, fighting corruption. It must not just be empty slogans or empty words, but it must be, visible, a practical action that each and every person can see in South Africa that the current leadership is indeed fighting corruption. Fighting corruption, it does not necessarily end with, arresting those who are implicated, but even speeding up the court processes, empowering the judiciary to be in a better position to can impose, sanctions against those who are stealing from the public. And when South Africans, 60 million plus South Africans, start to realize that indeed those who are stealing from them, those who are benefiting from corruption are indeed, sent to jail, are now populating our presence. That's when South Africans will start to say, this is a kind of leadership that you want. This is a kind of government that you want. But to talk about, anti-corruption, but without practical demonstration of fighting corruption, it will remain an empty slogan. So our advice to the leaders, irrespective of their names, is that they must do everything possible to fight corruption, to get rid of corruption, because it is stealing the dreams of South Africans. It is making South Africans to be unemployed. When you talk about unemployment statistics, it's as a result of billions of rands that were stolen during the state capture era. So it must not be empty slogans. They must be seen. Everybody wants to see repercussions, punishment meted to those who are stealing from the public. So if the President Ramaphosa can do that, to say, now I don't concentrate whether you are my comrades or not, but if you are stealing from the people, then definitely the wrath of the law must be meted on you. That's what I mean when I say fighting corruption, embarking on organizational renewal.
Lukhanyo, of course, that means shaking up the very core of the ANC leadership, some very top structural elements will have to be removed if corruption is going to be dealt with decisively. And that takes us very quickly to the Electoral Conference later on in the year. There's already an endorsement from Limpopo for current party president Cyril Ramaphosa. Lots of analysts saying it's very likely that he'll run a second term as the president of the country and of the party. Let's also then look at the structure of the top six. Some people say Jessie Duarte has indicated that she has had enough. She needs some rest. Whether that's the case or not, tell us what you think is going to happen in the top structures of ANC leadership come the Electoral Conference later this year.
Well, that is going to be very much the most interesting source of speculation with regards to what will happen this year. A lot of people will be looking at their crystal balls, and I hope that they'll be clear enough to be able to see as to what will happen in December. Correctly, the current DSG of the ANC, Jessie Duarte, has indicated that she would want to retire at the end of this particular term. So at the end of this year, in December, she will not be standing for re-election, as she has indicated. That might change, but for now, that's what we know. The president seems very interested in a second term because he has not done anything to dispel notions or calls for him to get a second term. And when it goes into this year, the 2022 National Electoral Conference of the ANC, he goes in a much stronger position than he was in 2017. He has managed with his supporters to flip the support of the ANC Youth League, which in 2017 was against Cyril Ramaphosa in Nasrec. It has now yesterday gone out and come out to endorse a second term for the president, throwing its weight behind him. He has also been able, or he might also be able, to flip the support of the Northwest, which was disbanded, the PEC, and was given over to his supporters as the interim provincial committee, interim leadership structure there. So he might be able to flip that province, he might be able to flip Free State as well. And both of these conferences didn't support President Ramaphosa in 2017. He might actually be able to flip Mpumalanga as well as a province that might come out to endorse him. Also remembering that Mpumalanga didn't endorse their campaign, and they look like they're in a very strong position for the president to get a second term. What would be interesting is whether or not they bring David Mabuza along with them as deputy president.
Well, of course, we saw hints from Ronald Lamola that he is aiming for the deputy president position. We'll have to see how that plays out. Elvis, some closing comments from you. Do you think the political future of Cyril Ramaphosa hinges very directly on the recommendations of the Zondo Commission into state capture? If he fails to implement recommendations decisively, do you think that could put an end to his political future?
Yeah, one thing that I've observed is that in the ANC, is that usually political preferences for the ANC are not necessarily and automatically preferences for the country or for the Republic of South Africa. You may find that some things as ordinary citizens, we don't understand why the ANC can take such kind of a decision, but only to find that within the political structures of the ANC, the very same thing that confuses the nation happened to make sense within the ANC political structures. So what will happen is that Ramaphosa will try to indulge in a balancing act. He must be able to satisfy the political structures of the ANC because these are the only structures that can guarantee him a second term. But at the same time, he must also try to consider what will be in the best interest of the country or of the nation. And usually it's a very delicate, balancing act we can indulge upon. You can even go back with regard to previous presidents. You remember during the era of Thabo Mbeki when he was ANC president, there were some cries within the ANC structures that he has turned government into the supreme center of power at the expense of Lithuli House. And when Jacob Zuma became president, there were some cries within the ANC that Jacob Zuma is now micromanaging government from Lithuli House. So Ramaphosa, like other previous presidents of the ANC, must try to craft, a diligent balancing act between the ANC and the interest of the states, because from time to time, the interest of the ANC are not necessarily the best interest of the country. And I don't know how Ramaphosa will try to navigate through that complex journey.
Very tough shoes. Glad I'm not in his position. Thank you very much both for your insights.